In 7.5 months, truly won't be the little one.
What? Hey! Yay!
And then when Janelle was, you know, she didn't say anything and she didn't come up to me, and I just went, okay, this is where she's at, and I have to be okay with that.
Robyn's announcement was not the reason I was in a bad place that day. It's my family.
And one thing that people were saying in the comments was you were split. Some of you felt that Robyn was being manipulative, wasn't really crying, there was no tears, and others of you felt like she was genuine. So another thing many of you have noticed this season is Kody's behavior. So this season, more than any other, Kody's erratic and over-the-top, controlling and condescending behavior towards his wives has been fodder in the comments of who is this man? Why are these women so into him, and what is going on with this family?
We've got these great memories and we got these beautiful children, and you hate polygamy? What the crap?
So earlier today, I had the opportunity to speak with someone who grew up in the AUB, who knows the family personally, but wanted to stay anonymous. And they let me know that the Kody Brown that you are seeing on television right now is exactly who he is.
Robyn, stop. Stop defending Mary. Stop acting like you're not getting the end of the stick here.
I'm not.
Listen, this is pissing.
I'm so angry I almost can't talk. For all my marriage with Mary, I felt like she unloads her emotions, burden that I'm supposed to carry. I'm not carrying this burden. Because if Mary and I really wanted to be together, we would.
So for years, this person said that they have been in private, and people that have left have all been kind of whispering about how Kody is just not the nicest guy. He is not super nice to his wives. He puts them down. He's very controlling. He wants them all to submit and obey. He wants everything to be his way. He's the king. And his behavior of saying terrible things to the wives, commenting about their looks, withholding things from them, manipulating them, gaslighting them, that's all par for the course for Kody.
It left me running on empty, and I asked him for help. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. He's like, you're just changing all the agreements and everything. And I said,
and the way that he's been blaming Christine for leaving. He blames Christine for breaking up the family. He blames Christine for destroying everything.
That has literally excluded some of the other family members. Like the clickiness, the bullying, the exclusion, and stuff like that. Gabriel sees it one way, I see it negatively.
Again, par for the course for Kody. So basically what my source said is that Kody Brown, they allege, is extremely verbally abusive to his wives. He is also extremely controlling. And when things do not go his way, as evidenced by what you see on the show, he blames his other wives. And that privately, the wives have been struggling for years with Kody's erratic behavior, that it has come to a point for some where they just finally couldn't take it anymore.
and I get Kody. He's really confusing, and he's really so hard to get along with sometimes. And oh my gosh, his COVID stuff was so firm. And I'm like, oh my gosh, who is this?
When the show started, my source said that the family was already in a pretty tense spot. And I think you guys have seen that on the show. They've talked about that. But the idea that they were this perfectly blended family, that everyone got along and all of that, that was a lie. So apparently Kody had put his wives in an order, and Christine was the one that was to do basically all of the housework, take care of all of the kids, do all of it, while everyone else got to do, you know, work and do things outside of the home. And Christine, when she stepped outside of what he wanted her to do, that's when he started having problems with her. So when his wives, my source says, when Kody's wives sort of get away from what he wants, that's when he will start abandoning them. He will start isolating them. He will start withholding his affection from them. And he will go on to another woman because he doesn't want to put up with them, and as long as they're not keeping sweet. So with Mary, who refuses to leave, my source says is that Mary is playing what's called a martyr role.
I can't.
It is not a double standard because you emotionally have left and abandoned them in some ways, right?
Well, abandoned, please. I take the word back because
Okay.
I take offense to that word of abandonment. When Mary
Emotional-
had an affair,
And the martyr role is the long-suffering wife that has been abandoned by the husband but is enduring it to the end because she believes that she has to stay in order to get to heaven. My source says that they believe that Mary is still heavily indoctrinated, that it's not anything to do with the show or with money, but it has to do with belief. They said that many women, including Mary, will stay miserable until the end of their lives, and they do so because they think they are mandated by God. Now, when it comes to Robyn, we were talking about Kody's erratic behavior and how that could affect Robyn. So one thing I asked about that was, I said, Robyn, when she joined the family, wanted to be a polygamist. And she has been saying all season why she's upset that people are leaving and that she didn't sign up to be in a monogamous relationship. And this is where things get interesting. So my source says that Robyn was up in Montana, part of the large AUB group that lives up there, and she had been married to this guy named David Jessup. My source says that David Jessup wasn't the nicest guy. Probably got a little too physical with her and was not super good to the kids. But my source also says that David Jessup decided that he did not want to be a polygamist. And he made the decision that he wanted to leave the faith. And Robyn, my source says, alleges that when he wanted to leave the faith and didn't want to take another wife, their relationship ended because Robyn felt like she had to stay in the polygamist world and had to be a polygamist in order to get to heaven. She was so entrenched in her faith that she believed that it was her duty for her family and for her eternal salvation to be a polygamist.
Are sitting here killing ourselves basically to live this life. So it's hard for me to sit here with these kids and say, oh, it's no big deal. It is. It's huge for us to live this faith.
So she walked out of her marriage with David and found Kody, believing that she would find the polygamist that her first husband didn't want to be. So I asked my source, I said, okay, so why did David then give up custody of the kids? They didn't know for sure, but they said based on the fact that David left the church and they allege he was not the nicest of guys physically to the kids and to Robyn, that he probably just cut ties because it was easier for him, their opinion, it was easier for him to give up custody than the potential of anything about him being aired out publicly. And that it's not uncommon when a dad leaves or someone leaves the faith that they leave the kids with the group. So for him, cutting off his rights to his children sort of severed himself from the group, set himself from the cult, and then he doesn't have to go through the public humiliation of, I'm not the best dad, I'm not the best husband, whatever. So he was able to, my source believes, keep private. Now, I've asked them to do a little bit more digging for me, which they will, to let me know more details about him. But this is where things get kind of interesting. So basically what my source alleges is that when Robyn found Kody, she was in a position where she believed that he had the number of wives that he needed in order for her to get into heaven. And that when she joined the family, her hope was to be in a unified polygamous family, which is literally never what happens. Apparently there's always problems with wives and there's always issues with blending families, and it's never happy-go-lucky the way that they've tried to portray it for years. That now she's likely feeling very mixed emotions. So my source says that because of the position that she was in with David, and because she likely wanted to maintain her status in the family of being able to have Kody's attention and have her children have a father, she took on the role of being submissive and subservient to Kody, because she knew that doing that would make sure that Kody would be at her house, would help with the kids, would be a hands-on husband, and be a hands-on father.
When I first saw how Robyn ran your relationship with Kody, I'm like, oh my gosh, playing the helpless damsel and wanting Kody to do these things for you. And I'm like, oh, my gosh.
So now with Christine leaving and having him at the house all the time, she could in one breath be happy to finally have all of his attention, but then be struggling spiritually because she feels that he needs to have other relationships in order for them to get in heaven. Does that make sense to anyone? So she's gloating. My source is like, she's probably a tiny bit gloaty because she's gotten rid of the one person that was her competition. She said she never had to compete with Janelle because Janelle and Kody's platonic relationship that Kody always talks about. And she didn't have to compete with Mary because Mary has been estranged. So her only competition for Kody's time, affection, and everything was Christine. And now that that's gone, she has no one to compete with. But that puts pressure on her where she has to deal with all of his toxic emotions and his anger and his passive aggressiveness and his frustrations. And he has nowhere else to put that but on her. So she could end up feeling like suffocated by that, which I think she has expressed that his mood has been very hard for her to handle, and she isn't used to having him there all the time. Like, she likes having her alone time. I asked my source, knowing Robyn, knowing the family, I said, do you think Robyn is genuine in her sadness for Christine and genuine about how her feelings are? And they said they believe that Robyn is 100% genuine. They also said that Robyn is probably very, very sensitive. And they also said that Robyn is got a good heart and not a horrible person. So even though she's been villainized by the show, she's done what she's needed in order to have Kody there, which my source said is manipulative, but at the same time, it's what a lot of plural wives do in order to make sure their kids have a dad. That brings me to this full circle part of Kody's erraticness and his loss of this wife. I said to my source, I said, okay, so Kody's lost a wife now and he doesn't even know if they're divorced, and Robyn won't admit it, that they are divorced because they didn't go through the church. And this is what my source says because they actually left the church too and they didn't go through the church. They said that in order to leave, you have to get a release from the church. But a lot of the people that are in the AUB that leave the church don't go that route because honestly, it's not necessary if you're not a part of the church anymore. And if you don't believe in the faith anymore, like Christine kind of said, it's irrelevant to have someone in the faith say that you're released. They said that Kody could ask for a release if he wanted one, but he may not because he, in his mind, might want to have that woman on his plate in order for him to get into heaven. But I said, do you think that with her gone and with Christine, with Robyn so sad about her leaving, it has to do about their indoctrination and having to get into heaven? And even though Kody said that it was between them and God, my source believes that it's because Kody and Robyn are now fearful about their eternity and what this means for the family. Kody's erratic behavior is becoming more apparent to the audiences, and they've been able to hide this for a very long time, but things have become so hard for him to hide at this point that you're finally seeing who Kody is what I'm hearing. But on top of that, you have Robyn, who is also fully indoctrinated into this belief system. And so she too is putting up with it because she believes that this is what she needs to do. So Robyn's indoctrination will keep her there, is what my source believes. And Mary will stay because of her indoctrination. And the only one that they said that might leave would be Janelle. But they still said for Janelle that she has such an easy situation with Kody because it's such an easy relationship that she doesn't necessarily even have to leave because she already has what she wants. But they do hope that with Christine leaving that it'll push Janelle kind of over the edge. But when it comes to who Kody is and like how good of a dad he is and what kind of a husband he is, they said this is who Kody is. With regard to the kids not speaking to him, like my source basically said, like Kody is by no means able to be with all the kids. It's impossible for a polygamist to have a solid connection to his children. And the oldest children likely are siding with Christine, according to the source, because Christine raised them. Christine was their primary caregiver, and they probably saw how Kody left and treated Christine, and that makes them angry and many of them have left the faith. And so without the ties to the faith, it's hard for them, in their opinion, to justify how he treats other people and how he treats the moms. And I said, do you think more could fall out from this? And my source said, I would expect this to completely change the entire dynamic of the family. The family culture as a whole is going to continue to erode and rupture, and there's going to be more fallout. So what that means for today, I don't know, but I have more stuff to come out soon with other details about their thoughts about if Kody will take another wife, and some more details about Janelle and Robyn's relationship, which I've been rewatching all of the older episodes, and man, the whole situation has been in front of our eyes the entire time, and now that they've finally broken up, it's all becoming very obvious. So I am going to be plowing through the old seasons and diving and digging back deep, but for now, that's what I've got. Are you surprised by any of this? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.